At last we come to the review of episode 3. Certainly an episode that has sparked a lot of debates online about baby orcs. Where not to plot against your queen, and how masculinity is totally absent in this season. Yes, prepare for more whining, there's a lot of it in this episode, and I have a feeling it only gets worse going forward. As always, I'll give points at the end for various aspects. Unlike the 2 previous episodes, I'll break down this one in chronological order. The episode kicks off with a little recap from Season 1, where we see Isildur's horse Beric ride off to save him somewhere in Mordor. Now this is likely a rip-off from Jackson's The Two Towers, where Aragorn's horse saves him after the warg attack. Something that isn't in the books, by the way. There is, however, a little lore behind it though. I'm not sure if the showrunners even know this, but from the nature of Middle-earth, we learned that the Númenóreans have a special bond with their horses and treat them extremely well. This special bond means they can call their horses to them with their very thoughts, or so some believe. So I'd like to imagine the horse can sense Isildur is alive and in danger, but I'm probably giving the show a bit much credit here. Anyway, as it searches for Isildur, it comes across a small pack of orcs that tries to capture it. Then it kills 2 of them and rides into the Black Forest, which is a made-up location. Inside the Black Forest is a cave. The cave is the lair of Shelob, and here we find Isildur trapped. I got no idea how he got there, but if we ignore that fact, it's actually a very horrifying and cool scene. Here we get to see young Shelob kill an orc and try to eat Isildur. We also see her lesser broods that would later spread to other parts of Middle-earth, like Mirkwood. Now, none of this happens in the lore, but it brought us some actual lore I'll briefly cover now. Shelob didn't live in this cave, but in Torek Ungol, even before Sauron returned to Mordor around 1000 in the Second Age. She wouldn't actually be small, as she quickly grew fat by eating men and elves. Later she would also eat orcs, just like we see in the show. When Gondor was founded, Isildur would build the city of Minas Ithil, which you might know by its later name, Minas Morgul. As we all hopefully know, this is extremely close to Shelob's lair. There's no evidence to suggest Isildur ever met Shelob, but it seems very likely that he at least knew of her. So while this entire scene is made up, it's at least cool and not as far from the lore as most of the stuff they made up. Of course we all know Isildur won't die, so the stakes aren't really high here. I guess this scene also means they'll meet again later in the season. I don't think it's the last time we see Shelob at least. The letdown is that we know neither will die, but maybe they'll kill off some of the made up characters. Then we get to Númenor, where the funeral of Tar Palantir is taking place. This is sadly not how it would go down in the lore. The kings and queens of Númenor were buried in Norinan, the Valley of the Tombs. I would have liked to see that and get a closer look of the mountain Mendeltama. Instead, the show once again thought that connection to the sea is what should define the funeral. Anyway, a whiner shows up and slaps the queen, which should pretty much be a death sentence, if not a prison one. The queen responds by whining too. I can't help but think all this whining and crying and weeping and tears has to do with all the female directors this season. Why is the natural response for everything to cry? Was that really in the script? I can't help but thinking about this. I honestly just find it laughable because it happens all the time, especially in this episode. But we will see, just hang on there. Oh yeah, and add to this a bitter Eärien that blames the queen for the death of Isildur, who isn't dead at all by the way, as we just learned. We still know nothing of Anarion, the other brother, and it's starting to get really weird. Maybe he's cut entirely from the series, which at least means his story won't be butchered like the rest of the characters. Then a short scene with Pharazôn and blind Miriel. She gets to choose what to wear at her coronation, red or white like her father. She chooses white of course, and this entire thing is made up. Next we have a scene at the local tavern with Pharazôn, his son Kemen, Eärien, and a Númenórean lord called Belsagar. Belsagar wants Pharazôn to become king, much like the lore, where many also supported him. There he at least was a strong and great commander that even managed to defeat Sauron and drags him to Númenor in chains. We can't have that here in the show, so here he's just reduced to a scheming politician, basically. It felt a bit forced to me to see Eärien support these evil guys, but it's probably just me. She's about to reveal a secret to the others that can help them in their plot to overthrow the queen, but then Valandil shows up and makes a scene. There's a little tension between him and Kemen, so between 2 made-up characters. Not that anyone cares. Anyway, Muriel discovers the Palantir is gone, and it's quite obvious that Earian stole it. Next we're back in Mordor with Adar and this ugly freak. We then get to see his disgusting wife and baby. And this has really blown up on the internet. So allow me to comment on it. Yes, it's true that orc women exist and that orcs have offsprings like the other children of Ilúvatar. You know how that works. So I won't go into details. However, seeing them as a little happy family is quite far from how I imagine it. We never really learn how it's all done, but based on what we know, it seems to have been done systematically at times, especially for breeding armies. And now it starts to get a little dark, so you have been warned. We know that orcs love machinery and making things efficient. We also know that orcs were basically the slaves of Sauron. That's how they're described in the Lord of the Rings, though there are also actual slaves. Male orcs are ideal for war, as they are stronger than women. Of course, we live in a crazy world now, where it's controversial to even say the truth. But that's how it is. Orc women, though, are less strong, so it also seems unlikely they will be used for war. They could do one thing males can't, and that is making children. So I think they were used as breeding slaves, chained up, meant to bear children until they could no longer. It actually reminds me of something Napoleon once said. Women are nothing but machines for producing children. He certainly sounds like an orc. It's a very dark and sinister thing to imagine, but that's the way of the orcs. Evil, corrupt, and without love for others. That's at least my theory on it, which seems far more plausible than this little happy orc family. Anyway, let's move on. We are introduced to the hill troll Damrod, with some odd music playing. His name is stolen from one of the Ithilien Rangers in the Lord of the Rings, so his name doesn't really make any sense. He is apparently a killer of stone giants, the massive giants we know from The Hobbit, which might not actually exist in the world. They are certainly more mythical than most other races. It doesn't end there though. Damrod has also eaten dragon bones. Who knows why? The article that came out before the season even says he has killed multiple dragons. It seems unlikely, but dragons vary in size and strength, and the cold drakes can't even breathe fire. So I guess he could have killed a few of them, but it still seems ridiculous to me. Anyway, he's eager to help Adar in the war against Sauron, for some unknown reason we might learn later. Then we cut to Rhuidean, where Disa and Prince Durin have arrived. Here we see the 7 dwarf rings about to be crafted. There's so many things wrong here. First of all, these were made before the 3, and they were never made for dwarves. Sauron just gave them to them, in order to try and control them. Something that failed, unlike with men. Durin doesn't really trust Anatar, which makes sense. We also get a glimpse of Celebrimbor's pride, which at least is closer to the lore than his appearance. Then we cut back to Isildur in Mordor. He sees the corpses of some of his fellow soldiers. I don't think it's the dead marshes, but it gives that sort of vibe. He then runs into the Istrid that stabs him in the thigh. Like an idiot, he thinks it's a good idea to keep the knife in. Yeah. Anyway, she has a map that leads to Pelargir. How lucky, huh? Apparently everyone in the show just has a map, even though they should be quite rare. They come across a wounded old man, but it's a trap and really just an ambush by a bunch of traitors. Then Arondir shows up and defies gravity, just like last season. It's so tiresome, and he just comes across as a cheap black copy of Legolas. Peter Jackson's Legolas, mind you. The elves aren't as exaggerated in the books as in the films, and apparently in this show. Anyway, he saves the day, but is super grumpy because his lover is dead. Now, we know the actress quit because she was too busy being an activist, so I guess that's how they wrote her out of the script. We then get to see this sad excuse of Pelargir that apparently is now only a small but also a ruined city or village, or whatever that is. The timeline of the show is a complete mess. Pelargir did not exist while the rings were made, and during the time of Isildur, it certainly wasn't a little ruin like this. And it certainly wasn't full of losers fleeing from Mordor. And then we have the true return of the king, Cringe Theo. A man of few words, but a lot of angry teen vibes. But get ready, it somehow gets worse. Back in Khazad-dûm, the food merchants want access to the grain reserve. Like I said last episode, why don't they sell some of the metals, jewels, or forged crafts? I'm sure somebody would trade it for food. The elves in Eregion perhaps, or the Northmen, who apparently isn't in the show at all. But no, instead the dwarves will starve, which is apparently why they'll need a ring. fuck's sake. It's incredibly dumb. I can't. I just can't. It's so hard to take seriously. But yes, this is why I don't take a ring. Back to Pelagia, where Theo heals Isildur while Arondir just stands there and weep like a little girl. It's a scene with 3 weak men all crying about how unfair the world is. Get ready for more of that. Theo and Arondir have a little not father to not son talk. Arondir tells us about Beleriand, which is now apparently an elf realm. I hope we all know this is far from the truth. Beleriand was a huge region in northwestern Middle-earth, and it had many realms, both of men and elves, and even other races. Theo once again shows he's an angry teen, and doesn't want to talk with the dirty elf that was giving it to his mom. Understandable. He then walks over to get some water, and Isildur tells him how superior the Númenóreans are to these lesser men, which is at least somewhat lore accurate. We never hear of aqueducts, but it's very plausible they made them. Theo then says he wants to help Isildur get back his horse Beric. At night the whiners meet up at the campfire, a perfect place to cry. Isildur starts off about crying about his guilt for the death of his mother, who drowned. But the sea is always right, remember that. Then Estrid cries about her mom, who cares? Then Isildur cries some more crying, more tears. Then Theo joins in, the master of ugly crying, even more tears, but with clunky dialogue now. I can't fucking do this. What a bunch of crybabies. It just goes on and on for like 10 minutes. Okay, here we go. It also seems like Estrid might be the future wife of Isildur, but let's hope not. It certainly didn't happen in the lore that he would marry someone that wasn't of Númenórean blood. The whole kinstrife started because the king married a woman from Rivanion and had a son that wasn't of pure Númenórean blood. So, no. Isildur and Theo takes off to rescue the horse, and then we see Estrid bearing the mark of Adar. Ooh, evil. Nobody cares. Isildur sneaks up to Beric, but then the wildmen start to notice him until Theo distracts them. Suddenly they are attacked by something we can't really see. It's most likely the Ents or Entwives, one of which we saw in the trailer. Theo getting captured certainly reminded of Merry and Pippin meeting Treebeard in the Two Towers. Would Ents or Entwives live in Ithilien or Lebanon? Not that we know of, no. But the Entwives, however, did live north of Ithilien, in the lands that would later be called the Brownlands. They don't exactly look like their male counterparts, but let's talk about that when we actually get to see them in the show. The coronation of blind Muriel, who can walk perfectly downstairs. I honestly don't buy her blindness, it's not very convincing, maybe it's the performance of the actress, I don't know. Anyway, somebody shouts as she is about to receive the scepter, the symbol of power of Númenor, which is at least correct. We get some more cheers, because that's the only way characters can react in this series. Then Earian shows up and throws the Palantir to the floor. Apparently that means she's evil, because it's made by elves. It's so damn stupid, to be honest. The Palantiri aren't dangerous at all at this point, as Sauron controls none of them. In fact, none of them are even in Middle-earth. It's simply a smart device for communication, at least visually. Apparently Elendil can't touch them, which is absurd, as he is the one that brings them to Middle-earth from Númenor. He is truly reduced to nothing in this series. I guess having a strong masculine man can't be part of the story. Then a great eagle shows up, which is apparently an omen. It is true that the eagles used to live in Amenelos, the capital of Númenor, but not after the shadow fell upon the kings, which was long ago by this point. There's no connection between coronations and the great eagles though, so that's made up. And the great eagles would certainly not approve of Ar-Pharazôn, a king's man. I don't really understand how they even interpret it as that in the scene. He is apparently elected king this way, which just makes no sense to me, but alright. He basically just walks over to it and that's it. Hopefully he will be called Ar-Pharazôn from now on though, just like in the lore. The last scene of this episode is the 7 being forged. I hope they look better than the 3, but I really doubt it. I guess we will all see that in the next episode and judge for ourselves. Let's move on to the points. Story. This is without doubt one of the more boring episodes. Isildur traveling to Númenor, the coronation, orc families, and the 7 being forged. That's all that happens. For this I can only give 1.5 out of 10. It was truly boring. Lore. As always, there isn't much lore to be found here, and the amount of things they butcher is beyond count. I'll give half a point for everything related to Isildur and Shelob. It's not lore accurate, but some elements are at least. Then I'll give half a point for Isildur's close connection to his horse, and the other way around. There are a few other things here and there, but not enough for a point in my opinion. So we end on a 1 out of 10. Visuals. I really like the look of Shelob, even though she shouldn't be small. I think the whole scene was the best part of the entire episode. Pelagia was a huge letdown, truly small, just like Greyhavens in this season. I think the eagle in Numenor looked good, but that's about it. For this reason we land on a 2.5 out of 10. Dialogue. It's certainly one of the better episodes in terms of dialogue, perhaps because we don't get a lot of scenes with elves and dwarves. There's still nothing particularly good, so I can't give it more than 3 out of 10. Acting. Boy oh boy, what a cry feast this was. I think every actor had tears in their eyes at some point, and it became so bad I laughed at the end. I think especially the scenes in Pelagia dragged it down and drowned us all in their tears. And there weren't any great moments in my opinion, so I end on a 1.5 out of 10. Music and sounds. I think the music in this series is some of the best parts of it, but it's still far from memorable, at least not to me. And it's not even close to the scores by Howard Shore. I think the music when Damrod was introduced is off, and it kind of felt distracting. Bear McCreary is great for making music to games like God of War, but I'm not sold on what he has done for this series so far. For this reason I land on a 2.5 out of 10. Final score. I guess the showrunners would do what they do best if they saw my reviews. Weep and then weep some more. God, it was hard to get through and even harder to take seriously. I think the episode was the worst of this season, so far at least, but it at least had that one good scene with Shelob. So we land on a 1.5 out of 10. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you all for watching, and special thanks to all the members and patrons supporting the channel. You guys are the best. If you want to know the true story about Shelob, check out this video next. Farewell till next time.